Pankti will be teaching us, talking to us about how B cell and T cell development. How this we know the cells have been formed. Now she will say how they are getting matured and how they develop.
Defense Academy, T and B cell development, and this class will be very important because it will form the basic framework of adaptive immunity. So we'll be taking it along this outline, first the T cells, then B cells, and then a comparative analysis between the two. So until the 1960s, people believed in the single lymphocyte hypothesis. And only in the year 1965, when Cooper and colleagues discovered the bursa of Fabricus, that we discovered that B cells are coming from another site and they're not getting developed in the thymus. And a decade later, when we discovered the mammalian equivalent of bursa of Fabricus, which was the bone marrow, then that solidified the two lymphocyte lineage hypothesis. So like Sanket started with border, and Defense Academy truly, as the name is to this class, we have the body dealing with various forms of attackers, like microbes. The first line are your soldiers in the first line, so you have your innate immune cells coming here, as well as some soluble mediators like complements acting as landmines. But behind this line, you have your generals, which are doing majority of the thinking work and the planning work and arranging the specific surgical strikes for you. And those are your T cells. And finally, you have your B cells, which are your archers shooting antibodies specifically at the antigens. So how does the body manage to train these T cells and B cells even before you come in contact with these antigens is simply miraculous. So let's see how that happens. So you have your T cells, T cell progenitors coming from the bone marrow and entering thymus. Now what is thymus? It is a well-encapsulated gland located in the chest, which is covered by a capsule which divides it into multiple lobes. Further, each segment is divided into the medulla, the corticomedullary junction, cortex, and the subcapsular cortex. So you have the progenitors that are entering through the blood vessels at the corticomedullary junction and moving through various phases to mature into T cells. So first comes the double negative 1 phase. Why double negative? Yes, so they are not expressing CD4, nor are they expressing CD8. They then move to the double negative 2 stage, wherein what is happening is it will start rearranging its TCR chains. So each TCR, T cell receptor, is made of either alpha beta or gamma delta, and we need some gene rearrangement to express those chains. So at the double negative 2 stage, if it manages to rearrange both the gamma delta chains, it will release as gamma delta T cells. Whereas if it goes towards forming beta cells, it will move to the double negative 3 stage. So it is at this stage that the double negative 2 cells are committing to the T cell lineage. Before this, it can form other types of immune cells. Now, once the beta chain has been rearranged, the cell will start proliferating to form clones containing the same type of beta chain along with a pre-alpha chain. The proliferation then stops to complete rearrangement of the alpha chain and then move to the double positive stage expressing both CD4 and CD8. And we have a unique process that happens here, that is positive selection. Other cells which do not undergo positive selection will die by apoptosis, and the rest will move into the medulla for further maturation, negative selection to remove cells that are self-reactive, and lineage commitment to CD4 and CD8, and these cells will then exit the thymus into the periphery. Now let's see in further detail how this is happening. So you have the thymus settling progenitors entering the thymus, and they are meeting this very important ligand called as Notch ligand. This is a hero ligand that is responsible for the development of T cells in the thymus. So it enters as the double negative 1 stage, which has still some primitive markers like your c-KIT, CD44, which is the adhesion molecule, and it is negative for CD25. What is CD25? It is the alpha chain for interleukin 2 receptor, which is again a very important cytokine involved in T cell development. So it will start moving towards the double negative 2 stage, where we learned that it will start rearranging the TCR chains. Now, any gene rearrangement is a difficult process. If the double negative cell manages to rearrange both gamma and delta, they will leave as gamma delta T cells. Now, this process can be difficult, and that is why we have a very limited percentage of gamma delta T cells in the body. These cells have some specific properties. They have an inherent capacity of cytokine production. They express invariant TCRs. What do we mean by invariant? Anybody? So invariant means it has a very restricted TCR repertoire. They respond to lipid antigens unlike your other T cells, and they home to various mucosal sites to form a part of an early defense. The rest of them who rearrange the beta chain move to the next double negative 3 stage. We can now see that it is expressing the beta chain along with a surrogate or a pre-alpha chain, and it has now started to express CD25. So, it receives some signals through the pre-TCR and undergoes this process of beta selection. What is beta selection? Number one, because it has acquired the growth receptor chain, it will start responding to interleukin 2 and it will start proliferating. Now, once the cells begin to proliferate, the concentrations of some enzymes like RAGs go down within the cells. So automatically, as we know, we inherit one set of allele from our maternal side and one from the paternal side. So if the cell has managed to rearrange one allele, the enzymatic concentrations go down and allelic exclusion happens for the other allele, right? And then we move to the double negative 4 stage where the cell again stops expressing CD25. It will again receive some signaling through the pre-TCR and now it will start rearranging the alpha chain because as the proliferation has stopped, your RAG enzymes again increase in concentration and the alpha rearrangement begins. Once that is done, we now have a double positive thymocyte expressing both CD4 and CD8 along with a mature TCR. Now in the thymus, you have two processes that are happening. Number one is positive selection. So it will interact with the cortical thymic epithelial cells and will get positively selected and then move to the medulla, where you have where the cells will mature into the single positive stage, meet the medullary thymic epithelial cells, and undergo the processes of negative selection to maintain self-tolerance. It will then mature, develop into single positive, acquire effector function, and start expressing the sphingosine 1-phosphate. This receptor is important because it will help in exit of these cells towards the blood vessels which are expressing high amounts of sphingosine 1. It will also start expressing interleukin 7 receptor and CCR7 required for the functioning of mature T cells. So this completes the phase 1 of T cell development in which we have lineage commitment to T cells, we have proliferation and beta selection, and formation of double positive T cells. We now move, this entire process takes about 2 to 4 weeks overall. And then we need to understand how the T cells mature to undergo and follow the golden rules of T cell function. First one, both CD4 and CD8 T cells can recognize the antigen only when it is expressed along with an MHC molecule. Number two, the MHC haplotype of the APC and the T cell must match. And lastly, of course, self-tolerance. So how does this happen and where does this happen? So of course it happens in the thymus, and this was a Nobel Prize winning work by Doherty and Zinckernagel, and it was discovered in the 1980s that MHC restriction and self-tolerance both happens in the thymus. So we have a lot of double positive cells being formed in the cortex, and you have these special cells known as the cortical thymic epithelial cells which are expressing MHCs along with self-antigens. You have some APCs as well in the cortex. And in the medulla, you have this special autoimmune regulator expressing medullary thymic epithelial cells, which have a very specific function. So the autoimmune regulator molecule is a protein that goes and binds to tightly coiled DNA and opens them up so that the transcription machinery can come and bind to the opened regions. So this cell is able to express all the proteins of the body. So it processes these proteins and expresses all the self-antigens onto its surface. You have some antigen-presenting cells like macrophages and B cells that phagocytose some antigens from these cells and also start expressing those antigens. And you have some migratory dendritic cells that have picked up antigens from rest of the body and are entering the thymus. Now with this landscape, let's see what will happen to the double positive cells. Those double positive T cells that have managed to rearrange a good TCR will now go and bind to MHC self-peptide complexes on the cortical thymic epithelial cell. Sorry, this is, yeah. These, if they form low affinity interactions, they will be positively selected, and this enables the process of MHC restriction. So you now have double positive thymocytes that are interacting with self-MHC self-peptide complexes. If your double positive thymocyte reacts strongly to self-antigens, they are going to die by apoptosis, resulting in some amount of self-tolerance happening in the cortex. If they do not interact, they're absolutely useless, they're going to die by neglect. So all your useless TCRs are cleared, your self-reacting TCRs are cleared, only your T cells that are able to interact with self-MHCs will now start moving towards the medulla. Here, they will transform into single positive cells. If they interact strongly by any chance with self-antigens, they are going to be either deleted, they'll die by apoptosis, or they'll get converted to regulatory T cells, which are your central Tregs. And if they form low affinity interactions with self-antigens, they're going to get survival signals and they will form mature T cells, gain effector function, and exit the thymus as mature cells. Now you must be thinking, then how do we ensure that these self-reacting double positive thymocytes are not all deleted in the medulla? Because here also they are interacting with self-antigens. Here again they are interacting with self-antigens. If they are interacting here with self-antigens, we are positively selecting them. If they are interacting with self-antigens here, we are negatively selecting them. So how is this process happening? So first is the affinity model. So as the affinity of the interaction increases, we have differences in the maturation of T cells. So those double positive thymocytes that do not interact at all will die by neglect. Only the low affinity ones will be selected. If it's intermediate affinity, they will get converted to regulatory T cells. And if they have high affinity, they'll be negatively selected. So those double positive thymocytes that are interacting with low affinity to the cortical thymic epithelial cells are positively selected. And if by any chance they manage to have a high affinity in the medulla, it offers a second layer of protection against self-tolerance. There is another interesting hypothesis, which is the altered peptide model. Now this says that the cortical thymic epithelial cells have a very special type of thymoproteasome and very special enzymes in their endosomes. What are they doing? You have the endogenous protein, which is digested differently in the thymoproteasome, and it is expressing private peptides. That means it is expressing peptides that are unique and different, which this T cell is never going to come across in the rest of the body, because the rest of the body is expressing your housekeeping enzymes and housekeeping proteasome or maximally immunoproteasome. So the peptide is not of importance when we talk about cortical thymic epithelial cells, but it is selecting those T cells which are interacting with the MHC. Whereas once your MHC restricted T cells move to the medulla, they come in contact with your public peptides, which they are going to encounter in the future in the rest of the body. And this enables the negative selection process. So we don't know which of the models are working, but most likely both of them are working in conjunction with one another. And finally, we have lineage commitment to the CD4 or the CD8 stage. And how does that happen? Again, there are various theories. First is the instructive model, in which if the double positive thymocyte randomly engages an MHC2 self-peptide complex, it will form a CD4 T cell. If it engages an MHC1 self-peptide complex, it will form a CD8 T cell. Another is a stochastic model. What do we mean by stochastic? Correct, means random. So there is random downregulation of one co-receptor. If it manages to engage, see if there is downregulation of CD4, if it happens to engage an MHC1, great, it will form a CD8 T cell. If it does not, it's going to die by apoptosis. And the last is the kinetic signaling model, which is the latest one, which people believe is the real thing that is happening. We have a downregulation of CD8 in all these cells. So there is more expression of CD4 compared to CD8. If the cell manages to attach to an MHC2 self-peptide complex, it will receive a continuous signaling from this MHC2 to the CD4. And this will be positively selected. But if it happens to engage an MHC1 self-peptide complex, it will receive a discontinuous signal, and that will enable the cell to form a CD8 T cell. Okay? And finally, we have a translational aspect here. So if we have mutations in the autoimmune regulator gene, which is autosomal recessive, you can get autoimmune polyglandular syndrome 1, which manifests very early, and you can have chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis, ectodermal dysplasia, and various autoimmune manifestations. Why does one get chronic mucocutaneous candidiasis here? An autoimmune polyglandular syndrome? Sorry? No, it's actually because of presence of anti-interleukin 17 antibodies that develop because of the imperfect negative selection that is happening. Fine. We now move to the next section, that is B cell development, which is happening in the bone marrow. So we have the hematopoietic stem cells, which are the self-renewing cells located in the endosteal niches, and which then move to the early lymphocyte progenitor stage and the common lymphocyte progenitor stage. Up to these two stages, they can still form other type of immune cells. But at the common lymphoid progenitor stage, if it comes to the B cell lineage, it will start moving towards the early pro-B cell and the pro-B cell stage, where it will first undergo a VDJ recombination. Now, VDJ is to your heavy chain and VJ is to the light chain. So, heavy chain rearrangement begins first. Once it has formed a heavy chain and it expresses a pre-B cell on its surface along with a surrogate light chain, it is called as the pre-B cell. This forms the first checkpoint. So, you have cells expressing the pre-BCR, and if the cell fails to express the pre-BCR, it will die by apoptosis. So only the cells that are expressing pre-B-cell will receive further signals and they will mature into an immature B-cell, which will express a membrane IgM. So it undergoes a light chain rearrangement to either express kappa or lambda and form a mature membrane IgM. Those cells that fail to undergo a kappa, lambda or a VJ rearrangement, they are going to die by apoptosis. Those cells that are self-reacting, suppose the BCR is self-reactive to the stromal antigens, what will happen? The RAG enzymes are again switched on and there is some amount of receptor editing that happens. If the cell now does not react, it's going to survive. If it is still reacting, it will be deleted or converted to a BREG. This forms the second checkpoint. These immature B cells now leave the bone marrow. Now let's see how this happens in further detail. So we have the hematopoietic stem cell interacting with the stromal cells with the help of c-KIT and stem cell factor, which is providing growth signals to it. When you have certain transcription factors like high Ikaros and low PU1, the cell starts committing itself towards the B cell lineage. So first is the early lymphocyte progenitor stage, where it starts expressing FMS-like tyrosine kinase receptor, which will interact with its ligand, which will result in expression of transcription factor E2A. This will result in further maturation of this cell to a common lymphoid progenitor stage and expression of interleukin 7 receptor along with CXCR4 and CXCR7. Further signals from this will result in expression of EBF, that is early B cell factor. Early B cell factor and E2A together bring about further maturation into the pre-pro B cell stage. So it is at this stage that the cell starts expressing CD45 and begins the heavy chain rearrangement with the DJ segment. Interleukin 7 further brings about activation of the PAX5 transcription factor that will bring about completion of the VDJ recombination. It will now start expressing CD19 and immunoglobulin alpha beta chains. Interleukin 7 is extremely important, as we can see here. Through the JAK-STAT pathway, it is bringing about activation of various transcription factors, your EBF that starts the DJ recombination, and your PAX5 that completes it with the VDJ recombination. And at the same time, it is providing survival and pro-B cell proliferation signals to the B cell, helping development of B cells. After formation of the pro-B cells, now your heavy chain has been rearranged and you have the pre-B cell that is expressing the pre-BCR on its surface. So you have the pre-BCR, CD19, CD45 at the pre-B cell stage, and it will now receive signals through the pre-BCR. This signal results in a process very similar to beta selection that was happening in the thymus. So you have apoptosis of those cells that are not expressing the pre-BCR because they will not receive any signals. You have proliferation of these cells. If there is pre-BCR expression, signals through that will bring about proliferation, allelic exclusion in the same way, and it will, with the help of IRF4 and 8 transcription factors, it will bring about VJ recombination for the light chains. It will then move to the immature B cell stage where it will start expressing a mature membrane IgM with either the mature kappa or the lambda light chains. It is at this stage that the B cell will start expressing your CD20, and that is why anti-CD19 antibodies target a much broader spectrum of B cells, and that is why even with your CAR T cells, you have majorly anti-CD19 CAR Ts coming up in a big way. So once it expresses a membrane IgM, it will receive signals through this and undergo the second checkpoint. What is the second checkpoint? If it fails to express a mature IgM, it will die by apoptosis. Your B cells don't require any antigen presentation by an APC. So if it manages itself to recognize any self-antigens in the stromal cells, it will undergo receptor editing and subsequently clonal deletion. And then it will start expressing sphingosine 1-phosphate receptor and leave the bone marrow. Now, unlike your thymus, which is responsible for the complete development of T cells, your B cell development is not complete in the bone marrow. So it spends about 1 to 2 weeks here and then starts moving in the blood vessels towards the spleen. In the spleen, it will travel through the central arteriole and enter the periarteriolar lymphoid sheath, where they are now known as transitional 1 B cells. It is still expressing the membrane IgM. It will then mature further and start expressing IgD. So it will undergo some class switching here, and it is now known as a transitional 2 B cell. Some of these transitional 2 B cells will then move to this marginal zone in the spleen and mature into marginal zone B cells, which express more IgM as compared to IgD. And some of them move to the follicle, where they mature into follicular B cells, or sometimes also called as B2 B cells. These will then leave the spleen and then home to various lymph nodes. Now, what exactly is happening here in between the periarteriolar lymphoid sheath and the follicle? Now remember that although we have 2 checkpoints in the bone marrow, the process of self-tolerance is not foolproof. So you still have transitional 1 cells expressing a BCR that may be self-reactive. So what happens is, if they receive very high affinity signaling in the periarteriolar lymphoid sheath, they are going to die. So now you have your B cells that are not reacting to self-antigens moving towards the follicle, where now if they acquire some form of a strong follicular signal, they will start expressing the BAFF receptors. If they fail to receive this signal and fail to express BAFF, they will die by apoptosis, whereas those cells that receive signals from BAFF, they are going to mature. Now, here again, there is something which is very paradoxical happening, that if you receive a high affinity signal in the periarteriolar lymphoid sheath, the B cell is dying. Whereas if it is receiving a high affinity cross-linking signal here, it is maturing into a mature B cell. So why is this difference? So in the transitional 1 stage, the cell membrane of the B cell is very immature. It has very little cholesterol. And like Sakir said, for the BCR signaling, you need good formation of lipid rafts. Poor cholesterol, poor lipid raft formation. So what happens is, even though it is receiving a high affinity signal, the second messengers are getting, second messenger predominantly calcium is getting diverted to the apoptotic pathway. So your self-reactive B cells will die over here. Whereas those positively selected B cells here, when they acquire a follicular signal, now they have matured enough that they're expressing high cholesterol on their membranes and they're able to form high number of good lipid rafts. This will result in a stronger BCR signaling and activation of your MAP kinase and other kinases with stronger survival signals and anti-apoptotic signals. And this is helped further by expression of BAFF receptors. And BAFF expression is very high in the lymph node follicles, which will save these non-self-reacting B cells and help them mature into mature B cells. So looking further into the details, we have the immature cells traversing through the blood vessels, expressing the membrane IgM, moving into the periarteriolar lymphoid sheath, where it where it forms the transitional 1 B cell. It then undergoes the process of negative selection through interaction with self-antigens, starts moving towards the follicle. In this process, it will undergo class switching and start expressing the delta chain. The transitional 2 stage, it will start expressing CD21 along with CD23 and BAF receptors, receive further signaling through the BCR as well as the BAF, mature into the follicular B cell. And you have the follicular B cell here. Some of these transitional 2 cells enter the marginal zone where they acquire a unique type of receptor, which is the CD1, which is your MHC1-like receptor that enables a response to lipid antigens. So a comparative analysis between the B cells. So we learned about follicular B cells, we learned about marginal zone B cells, and we have another type, which is your B1 B cells. These B1 B cells can be further subdivided based on the CD5 expression into B1A and B1 B cells. We're mainly going to talk about B1 B cells here. So you have your follicular B cells coming from the hematopoietic stem cells. They depend on interleukin-7 and BAF for their development, and they are highly diverse. They require T cell help to respond to protein antigens and undergo the unique processes of somatic hypermutation, class switching, and express large amounts of IgG antibodies. They also have the properties of memory. And on the other hand, you have your marginal zone B cells that are coming again from the hematopoietic stem cells. They reside in the marginal zones of the spleen. Now, your marginal zones of the spleen is where the blood-borne antigens are getting concentrated. So these cells lie there to respond to blood-borne antigens in a better way. They depend on IL-7 and BAF for their development. They have somewhat a restricted repertoire. They have a very unclear role whether they undergo any T cell helping or somatic mutation. That's why they primarily produce IgM antibodies, and they primarily respond to carbohydrate antigens as well as protein antigens. And the phenomenon of memory is unclear in them. What about your B1 B cells? B1 B cells are like your gamma delta T cells. They come from the splanchnoplura in the yolk sac and start homing to the peritoneal and pleural cavities. They are self-renewing because you don't have any hematopoietic stem cells that are coming to rescue them. They have to self-renew themselves. And they don't depend on any interleukin-7 or BAF. They have a restricted diversity, and they don't require any T cell help, and they primarily produce IgM antibodies in a natural way. They do not need any antigenic stimulation for antibody production. They inherently produce some amounts of IgM that are going to take care of common infections like Francisella tularensis, influenza, streptococci, and they respond better to carbohydrate and lipid antigens, and therefore they also take care of your apoptotic RBCs and apoptotic cells. Because remember, B cells are also an antigen presenting cells, so they have phagocytosing abilities. They possibly respond to protein antigens, and they have a very poor memory as compared to follicular B cells. Finally, in summary, let's compare and contrast the development of B and T cells. So we have some lineage in both these cells that is seeded during fetal development. That is your B1A cells in B and gamma delta T cells in T cells. They both develop from the hematopoietic stem cells in the bone marrow, except your B1 B cells. Development continues in the thymus? No. Your B cell development happens in the bone marrow and spleen, not in the thymus. Immunoglobulin heavy chain or TCR beta rearrangement begins with DJ and continues with VDJ for both. And the BCR and the TCR is expressed initially with a surrogate light chain or the surrogate alpha chain in case of T cells. Signaling through these pre-receptors results in further development of both these cells. And after that, you have a rearrangement for your kappa lambda chains or your alpha gamma chains in case of T cells. And signaling from the completed receptor is absolutely essential for maturing into the further stages. Positive selection requires recognition of self-components for both of these. Receptor editing happens predominantly for the B cells, but some amounts of it also happen in the thymus for the T cells. Immature cells bearing high affinity autoreactive receptors are deleted or converted into regulatory cells. Negative selection involves expression of peripheral tissue antigens in the primary lymphoid organs. Yes, for the T cells, because the thymus has the medullary thymic epithelial cells expressing IR, but no for the B cells. Negative selection involves recognition of MHC-presented peptides. No for B cells, of course, yes for the T cells. You have antigen receptor allelic exclusion happening for both, with a process of beta selection in the T cells and a similar process for B cells. And remember that more than 90% of the lymphocytes go to waste before they even come out as mature cells. So much of negative selection is happening for both of these cells. Okay, thank you. Open to any questions.
Thank you, Pankti, for fantastic presentation. I think next time we should have a lecture separate from you, how to make original slides and beautiful slides. They are making such a complex stuff, making look so simple, and really, really appreciate that. And I think, any questions from youngsters? Any questions? Ashin, do you want to ask something?
So I think I missed some part of your earlier presentation. But fundamentally, my question is, like, do we really understand like how different type of B cells are interacting with each other and are able to fine tune our like Sanket's initial on the adaptive immunity? Do we really understand that right now?
Yes, Dr. Sandhya will be taking that about how B cells come in contact with antigens and how they fine tune their response. Sorry. I'm saying Dr. Sandhya will be talking about the fine-tuned B cell response to antigens.
So no, I have a second part to that. Like, so is that,
You're saying
is that
during
pathway
the-
very fairly well understood? Like how they are interacting with each other, the set of different B cells and the T cells, right? Do we understand their interaction fairly well right now?
Interaction with B cells with B cells.
B cell, T cells, and the entire.
Yes, so that happens once the B cells come in touch with the antigen. So that Dr. Sandhya will be taking up. So this up till now, we only learned that B cells are generating a wide repertoire of BCRs, that is your B cell receptors, that may interact with antigens if they come in contact. And that again, Sakir will be explaining in detail in the next class.
One clinical question. What happens in ALPS, autoimmune lymphoproliferative
Yes.
syndrome?
So, in autoimmune lymphoproliferative syndrome, you basically have a defect in the Fas ligand pathway, which is your extrinsic apoptotic pathway. So, if that is defective, the cells are continuously proliferating and are getting exhausted. That is why you have a very high number of exhausted or your double negative T cells and P cells in the circulation, and they are autoreactive because they will start responding to your self antigens as well because they are in such high numbers and they are highly inflammatory. So that is what happens in autoimmune lymphoproliferative syndrome.
Ma'am, a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
One question, few words about B regulatory cells and their role in autoimmunity.
B regulatory cells in?
What is the importance of that?
So, B-regs they discovered very recently in which they have interleukin-10 producing capabilities. So, those B cells that are self-reacting are converted to B regulatory cells. So, in the periphery, they help, like you have peripheral T-regs and central T-regs which are IL-10 producing capabilities. Similarly, you have your B-regs with a similar kind of action.
Ma'am, you mentioned about the transcription factors like Icaros and EBF.
Yes.
What are the source of these factors, and is there something that is determining the production of these factors which in turn influences the commitment of
Yes,
the
so
cells?
it all depends on your cytokine receptor interaction. So in the hematopoietic stem cell, when it is just having an interaction with the like your c-kit is interacting with the stem cell growth factor, these transcription factors don't come into play. When it begins to commit to a particular lineage, so it begins with some signals. So you have Icaros and PU1 that initially come into the picture. Then it starts expressing FMS like tyrosine kinase. So that will further signal E2A. Then it starts expressing interleukin-7 receptor. That will bring about signaling of EBF and PAX5. So you have one signal after the other happening that controls the regulation of these transcription factors.
Ma'am, my doubt is there something that is determining the production of Icaros and EBF itself?
So from your hematopoietic stem cell, it's moving to the stage of early lymphoid progenitors, common lymphoid progenitors, and it automatically starts. So if it upregulates Ikaros and PU1, it will move to the B cell. If it's high PU1, it will move to the myeloid stage. If it's expressing a lot of Notch, it's going to move to the T cell phase. So exactly what the switch is happening, we're not aware of that, but it's depending on the initial stage, it starts expressing various growth receptors.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Pankti.